There's a question we don't ask enough. What makes someone immortal? We assume it's fame. We assume it's having your name carved in stone, written in books, remembered across generations. We assume immortality belongs to the kings and conquerors, the artists and inventors whose names everyone knows. But what if we've been looking at immortality all wrong? What if the most immortal people who ever lived are the ones whose names we'll never know? Today, we're going to explore 3 figures across 3 eras of human history. You've never heard of them. No one has. But their pain didn't just shape their own lives, it shaped yours. It shaped everything. And in a way that transcends memory or recognition, they achieved something far more profound than fame. They became truly immortal. But first, we need to understand something. This isn't about romanticizing suffering. Pain is real, and it destroys far more people than it transforms. But there's something we need to understand. There's a difference between pain that crushes you and pain that forges you. And that difference isn't really about the pain itself. It's about what happens in the space between the blow and the response. So why does pain have this power? Why does suffering sometimes create exactly the opposite of what we'd expect? Think of it like metallurgy. When you want to create the strongest steel, you don't keep it comfortable. You subject it to extreme heat, fold it, hammer it, plunge it into cold water. The stress reorganizes the molecular structure, eliminates weaknesses, creates something fundamentally different from what you started with. Human beings can work the same way. Not always. Not automatically. But sometimes intense suffering strips away everything superficial, everything merely social or performed, and forces a confrontation with what's actually real. What remains after that kind of fire is either nothing or something unbreakable. Let's start at the beginning. Not the beginning of recorded history, before that. Before writing, before empires, before anyone thought to preserve a name for posterity. Imagine someone living 10,000 years ago. Every day is a battle for survival. Hunger is constant. Disease is everywhere. Winter could mean death. There are no safety nets, no institutions, no guarantees that tomorrow will come. And in the midst of this precarious existence, someone decides to build something that will outlast them. Maybe it's an irrigation channel that will water crops for generations. Maybe it's a road that connects 2 settlements. Maybe it's a technique for preserving food, or a method for working stone that's just slightly better than what came before. They will never be thanked for this. There's no writing system to record their name. No one will build them a monument. No one will remember who first dug that channel or laid those stones. The pain they endured, the backbreaking labor, the uncertainty, the knowledge that they might die before seeing their work completed, could have stopped them. Why build for a future you'll never see? Why suffer for people who won't remember you? But they built anyway. And that anonymous choice, repeated by countless anonymous people across countless anonymous lifetimes, became something we take completely for granted. Civilization itself. Every road you drive on descends from someone who first understood that a path, once cleared, could be used again and again. Every building you enter exists because someone figured out how to make walls that wouldn't collapse. Every meal you eat relies on agricultural knowledge accumulated by people whose names vanished the moment they died. This is immortality without memory, impact without recognition. These people's pain, their labor, their sacrifice, their choice to build something larger than their own survival became infrastructure. And infrastructure became the foundation of everything that followed. They weren't trying to be immortal. They were trying to survive, to keep their children alive, to solve the problem right in front of them. But in solving it, they created solutions that outlived every king who ever ruled. You are living inside their legacy right now, every single day. And you don't even know their names. Now let's move forward several thousand years. Writing exists now. History is being recorded. But that doesn't mean everyone gets remembered. Imagine a natural philosopher in the early modern period, somewhere between the Renaissance and the Enlightenment. They've had an idea about how the natural world works, an insight that challenges everything the authorities teach. And for having this idea, they're punished. Maybe they're exiled from their city. Maybe their manuscripts are burned. Maybe they're denounced by the church, by the university, by everyone whose approval once mattered to them. They lose their position. They lose their security. They lose the community that defined them. They could recant. They could apologize, conform, go back to saying what everyone wants to hear. Most people would. Most people did. But some didn't. Some took their dangerous idea and went into isolation with it. And in that isolation, something happened. The pain of rejection stripped away everything performative. There was no audience to impress anymore, no reputation to protect, no social pressure to soften the edges of what they actually thought. What remained was just the idea itself, and the question, is it true? In that exile, the idea got refined, clarified, stripped down to its essential core. All the ego fell away, just the pursuit of truth, because truth was all they had left. And then something remarkable happened. The idea survived. Not because they were famous, not because institutions promoted it, but because it was true enough, or useful enough, or compelling enough that it spread anyway, person to person, generation to generation. Quietly at first, then louder. The thinker died in obscurity. Their name might appear in a few footnotes, might be completely forgotten, but the idea lived on. It became part of how we think, part of the invisible architecture of human thought. Their pain became a filter. It removed everything except what mattered. And what mattered turned out to be immortal, even if they weren't. Think about how many ideas you hold, how many ways you understand the world, that came from people like this. People who suffered for thinking differently, who refined their thoughts in isolation, who never got credit but whose insights became so absorbed into culture that we can't imagine thinking any other way. Now, let's come forward to the modern era, the 20th century and beyond. History is being recorded more thoroughly now. We have photographs, films, archives. Surely no one gets lost anymore, right? Wrong. Most people still disappear. Most lives still leave no official trace, especially the lives of people living on the margins, the displaced, the poor, the persecuted, the ordinary. But here's what we miss. The most profound form of immortality doesn't happen in archives. It happens in transmission, in what gets passed forward, person to person, generation to generation, in ways too subtle to document. Imagine a refugee who fled war with nothing but their children. They lost their home, their country, their entire world. They arrived in a strange place where they didn't speak the language, where no one knew their name or cared about their story. Everything that could break a person was pressing down on them, the trauma of what they'd survived, the humiliation of starting over with nothing, the exhaustion of trying to build a life from rubble while carrying the weight of everything they'd lost. They could have given up. They could have let that pain turn inward, become bitterness, become paralysis. But instead, they taught their children 3 languages. They worked jobs that crushed their spirit so their children could go to school. They told stories about where they came from so the culture wouldn't die. They modeled resilience, not the inspirational poster kind, but the real kind, the kind that gets up anyway. Those children grew up. They became teachers, doctors, engineers, artists. They raised their own children with the same resilience, the same work ethic, the same refusal to let circumstance define them. The refugee's name isn't in any history book. There's no monument. 3 generations later, even their own descendants might not know the full story of what they survived. But the values survived. The resilience survived. The pattern of how to live in the face of impossible odds. That survived. It's still moving through bloodlines and communities, and anyone who was touched by their example. Or think about the factory worker who spent 40 years on an assembly line, but mentored every young person who came through, who taught them not just how to do the job, but how to show up with dignity, how to treat people, how to find meaning in work that the world considers meaningless. That worker will never be famous. But the people they mentored went on to mentor others. The dignity they modeled became a template. The humanity they insisted on in a dehumanizing environment. That became a seed that kept growing. This is immortality as inheritance. Not genetic inheritance, but something more powerful. The inheritance of who you are, how you move through the world, what you believe is possible. So here's what these 3 figures across 3 eras teach us. Immortality has nothing to do with being remembered. The ancient builder achieved immortality through infrastructure, through creating systems that outlived empires. The exiled thinker achieved it through ideas, through truth that spread regardless of whether their name was attached. The invisible survivor achieved it through transmission, through passing forward resilience and values that ripple through generations. None of them were trying to be immortal. They were just trying to survive their pain without letting it destroy them. They were solving the problem in front of them, building something that needed building, thinking something that needed thinking, living in a way that preserved their humanity. But in doing those things, they created impact that never stopped. Their pain became something larger than themselves. It became the foundation other people built on. This is what we miss when we obsess over fame and recognition. The most powerful form of immortality is invisible. It's not about being known. It's about shaping what comes after you in ways that last forever, even if no one remembers you did it. You are surrounded right now by the legacy of people whose names you'll never know. The tools you use, the ideas you think, the values you hold, all of it rests on anonymous pain that became anonymous immortality. And here's the thing that should shake you. You might be one of them. The way you're raising your children, the work you're doing that feels invisible, the values you're modeling, the small kindnesses you're showing, the problems you're solving that no one will thank you for. You have no idea what will survive. You can't know which parts of who you are will get passed forward, which seeds you're planting will grow into forests 100 years from now. But the builders didn't know either. The thinkers didn't know. The survivors didn't know. They just kept building, kept thinking, kept surviving. They let their pain forge them instead of destroy them. And in doing so, they became immortal in the only way that actually matters. Not through memory, through impact, through creating ripples that never stop spreading, even after the stone that caused them has sunk beyond sight. Thanks for watching Echoes of History. If this changed how you think about legacy and impact, let me know in the comments. And remember, the most important work you'll ever do might be the work no one ever knows you did.